Hello and welcome to another episode of Epic Events. My name is Candace Davis and I'm the Director of Event Programming and Creative Services here at vFairs. And today I am joined by Merijn van Buren, founder and CEO of Event Mender, and also the creator and host of the Event Effect podcast. Welcome to the show, Merijn. It's so good to have you on.
Thank you so much, Candace. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite subject of increasing attendee engagement at virtual events. But before we dive into the topic, I want our listeners to get to know you a little better. So tell us where you're located in the world and also what you do and why you started Event Mender.
I'm joining in from our headquarters, which is in the Rotterdam of the Netherlands. Event Mender has been a very interesting journey. Actually, during the pandemic, I helped physical event companies to transition to virtual. And in that journey, I kind of ran into my own limitations in terms of the time I had available. And I wanted to help a lot more event professionals embrace the possibilities of virtual events. And that's where I started to think of how can we make it more scalable, automate a little bit. And that eventually resulted into Event Mender, where we help event professionals find the best match in terms of their virtual event platforms for their events.
Oh, that's such a cool concept. And coming up with that during the pandemic, I'm sure it was kind of like a no-brainer for you, like a light switch came on, but also it had to be hard getting it off the ground. Meanwhile, event planners were needing it right then and there, so I'm interested to see how that transition was.
It absolutely. One of the things we started doing was just talking with event professionals, and it became very clear that this was a big pain point for them because there are so many platforms out there and they're constantly changing. And an event professional is already super busy. Like, it's a hectic job they have. And if you then also have to do a lot of research and billions of demos, that's not something they would love. So actually, whilst talking to them, they were like, do you already have a solution for this? Unfortunately, it takes a while to build something like that. But yeah, obviously we can always help, just face-to-face, one-on-one. It doesn't all have to be automated. So it kind of is coming from completely face-to-face to more of a hybrid. And hopefully in the future, everything is completely automated. That's where we're working towards. So it's kind of a iterative process that slowly comes to the end goal.
That is so neat. And I'm sure event planners and organizers absolutely love it and love you for creating the company. So congrats to you.
Thanks.
So now that we've kind of gotten into Event Mender and what you do there specifically, I know you are there to really help support organizers and event planners, as you just mentioned, really find the platform that is best suited for their needs, specific to what type of use case or event they're trying to plan and execute. But I wanted to talk about today, specifically, how to really go about and focus on increasing attendee engagement. This is something that we hear all the time here at vFairs, and myself as well, planning events, is how do you increase attendance? And also with engagement, where do you start with engagement? I think there are so many different avenues to go down, and we'll talk a little bit about which are the best in your opinion too. But wanted to start off by asking you our first question specific to the topic. What are your best tips on increasing attendee engagement, specifically at virtual events? This is a big question, I understand, but I want to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, of course. No, it's a topic it's dear to my heart. Whilst I was advising those physical event companies, I did quite a lot of virtual events with them. So I learned quite a bit from that. And there are so many tips, and obviously, having at least some tools that make sure that people can become part of your event, and it's not just a one-way stream, you sending out a lot of things, but the participants only listen and that's it. But a lot comes down to not just having the right tools, as we briefly spoke about before. Like, you don't need all the tools in the world to make an engaging event. but you as an organizer, and mainly your host and your moderators, can play a really big role in terms of the engagement of your virtual event. If you have someone who is very welcoming and makes people want to actually interact, also gives them a possibility, talk to them. You probably have an overview of who's in the room. If you don't have their names, you don't have to make it too personally, but at least make sure that they feel seen, and ask them, where are they joining in from? It's like the most basic question that people ask at the beginning, but it does work to break the ice. And the moment that people start putting in something in the chat or getting an incentive to interact with one of the tools, the moment they've done it once, they will do it again and again. And before you know it, you have a lively chat, a lively environment, and you feel the buzz. Although you're probably in the room by yourself, you see the chats popping up. And that's something that also motivates others that may be a little bit more like wanting to only receive, that the moment they see other participants also engage with the content and share their ideas, probably, or most of the time, what you see is that it also incentivizes the ones that are kind of on the sidelines, seeing what's happening, to be like, oh, but I think different about this. So they will put something in the chat from their perspective, and then kind of a discussion comes in to the chat, which sometimes even can, well, I'm not going to say be more valuable than the talk itself, but sometimes the ideas that participants can share can really add value to the conversation. But also for you as an organizer, you can use it as content later that you didn't even were supposed to have. So it's really something that you have to purposely think about in your strategy. How are we going to make sure that we give a few of those touch points with our participants, where we just say, like, where are you coming from? Like, it can be, doesn't have to be topic related. It can be super basic, low entry, just so that people start talking. And then what are questions that we can ask our audience that further along in the session or in the program will really make them think and start a discussion. And that's something where you also have to take into account, who am I going to put in place to actually do that? Can be that, you have only sessions with one speaker. Most likely they're focused on their presentation. So maybe then it's a good thing to have someone of your team in the chat and do it in the chat. Doesn't always have to be the moderator itself. You can become the fire starter in that regard. So there are a lot of ways how you can do it, but just simply make sure that people feel seen, and that you give them the possibility to share their point of view. That's one of the most important tips I can give you.
Yeah. And, I find a lot with virtual events, especially over the past 3 years, people want to be seen. They want to be heard. And that is the best way to do some sort of opening icebreaker, is exactly what you said. Tell us where you're logging in from today. Someone, maybe on vacation somewhere on a beach, and someone's like, oh, I go there every year. That's so fun. Check out this place. I've seen some really cool connections happen just over that simple question. And some people will pick out specifically with wherever someone else is tuning in from and say, oh, I've been there. I loved going to this museum, or, I loved this specific coffee shop, and it kind of starts the connection, and it gets the conversations going too. And then the questions, like you mentioned, during, sessions and general chats and things like that too. Are you a big proponent when it comes to sending out polls, really to keep the attention live and open for attendees to submit?
I'm a big fan of not using polls for the sake of using polls, but as long as it really gives you actionable data or something that people really are curious about finding out what others think, then it's a very powerful tool, especially if you can also, a lot of platforms do that, where you can real time see the results of others. So you see the kind of the bars changing, the percentages changing. And that is also a big motivator. Like, as I mentioned, if people start chatting, people that are on the side that don't really put in a lot normally, they get more incentivized to do it. That the same happens with a poll, especially when you see that real-time results coming in. Then you're like, and at first I didn't want to put my answer in, but now I see that the answer I was going for is getting less and less percentage. I have to put my answer in, and that it really helps. And in that regards, it's a powerful tool when used in the right circumstances. Don't just use polls for the sake of polls. There, I would not recommend doing a less formal setting. Like, really make sure that it's about the topic that is relevant, because you can measure things, and it can even, like, a few companies do this very well, where they actually use those poll results, and then they write, after the event, they write a whole content piece about the results that they generated. X percentage of the participants was agreeing to this, or saw this happening, or is struggling with this part. And then you can also create a lot more content for after the event, because that's something you also have to think about. So only use it when it's really relevant for the topic, and for participants really gives them an incentive to interact and engage.
Yeah, I agree with that. Any other best tips, just to kind of scratch the surface here, with increasing attendee engagement that you find that are really helpful?
Yeah, as I mentioned, there are tons. One of the things that we really love doing, and that does require you to have a tool where you can literally kind of see who is in a room, can be even in the lobby, depending on what platform you have. Sometimes you have a lobby stream where, before everyone goes into the session, you have someone welcoming people, explaining how the platform works, where they can find things, kind of answering questions on the go. And that's something where it's really powerful, and that same goes for sessions, is to call people by the name. So you see them coming in, and you're like, hey, John, hey, Will, hey, Marie, hey, everyone. Call them by the name, because that's even more powerful than just saying, welcome, everyone. And, giving them a question. But if you call them by name, it's one of the most powerful tools you can have in your backpack, in your engagement backpack, to really make sure that people start engaging. Because the moment someone calls you out by name, either you didn't hear it, or you're definitely going to at least respond to that, because you feel seen and there's no way to hide. And that's something that in a virtual event, it's very easy for people to hide, because they're like, I'm only on the screen and no one can see me, my camera is off. But you, as an organizer, depending on what software you use, you can sometimes see the names of the people that are just joining in, and you're like, hey, so good to see you, how are you doing? Especially if you have a good connection with your attendees. If it's a little bit smaller event, let's say 100, 200 people, and you as an organizer know a lot of them by person, you can bring up something relevant to that person. Maybe they, as you mentioned, they went on vacation. You're like, hey, John, how was your vacation last week? So good to see you here. So happy that you have some time to join. That really is taking it to the next level. And that's something you obviously need to have the right data for, the right visual or dashboard for you as an organizer to see those people actually coming in. But most of the time in the room, you can definitely see the participants. So also in a session, this is a very powerful tool, especially if you have a good connection with your audience, to just call people by name, especially those that aren't in the chat a lot. Be like, hey, person X, you're being a little bit quiet today. I hope you're not trying to do your emails during this session, because you're going to miss out. Like, those are things that really, the moment we feel seen as a person, there's little we can do to keep hiding, like we have to put ourselves out there, and you have to react in the chat, even if they are doing some work at that point. The moment they hear in the background someone calling them by the name, they're like, oh shit, yes, I was in this event. Quickly, let's show I'm actually there. And that's something that really can drive people from whatever they're distracted from, or whatever boundaries they feel, to start engaging, to participate in the conversation and become an active participant.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip. And two, for me, when I go to virtual events and I'm an attendee, just putting on that attendee hat, if it's one thing, and you probably agree with this, when you get in a session, you join a general session or just a breakout session, once it starts, if it's pre-recorded or if it's live. Oh, yeah. And it turns me off like so quick when I know that it's recorded. it just kind of hurts a little bit. It's like, oh, I want this to be live. I want to see some interactions happening. And I think a lot of people have gotten really smart on both sides, recording it and making it feel like it's live. That's one way too. But I really think if we're going to do a virtual event, it needs to be live at all costs, as much as we can. There are some times where you can't have a speaker be there at a specific time when the event starts. I completely understand. I think if it's a huge name, a big leader, or, someone at a company that is kind of a household name in some ways too, especially like in the events industry specifically. But it's one thing when that happens too, but something happens. There's some sort of the energy exchange that happens when I'm sitting, watching a general session, let's say, and it's live, or a breakout session. And I know that it truly is live. I know that I can submit my question knowing that maybe they'll call my name out and say, hey, this question is from Candace. She wants to know XYZ. There's something really genuine that happens in that moment. And again, that sort of energy flow, people know that it's real. It feels more like a live event, and it absolutely should. I think we have to get really smart when we look at virtual events as we continue to plan them. They'll never go away. In-person events, I don't think that they'll go away either. I know the middleman is kind of, hybrid events. And I think that we just have to be very specific, and, the goal, the strategy that we have in these events, and really making them very customized and personalized when it comes to virtual events. That's my take. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely agree. Like I've been a big fan of like only live events, or like live actual people in the time interacting, because that's where you can get the most, in terms of engagement, you can get the most out of your audience. I know there are quite a few examples where people, for instance, do a combination. So maybe they aren't able to have a proper setup at the time of the session, so they do a pre-recorded session, but then the speaker itself is in the chat answering questions with people. And I think that is kind of it's not ideal, but it is a good midway or segue in between not being able to really be there at the time of the session, but still get that level of engagement and participation. In the kind of worst case, you can even have someone of your team, not per se impersonating that person, but kind of be the spokesman for the speaker, the big name that's there, to still interact with the people in the chat. But absolutely agree with you. Like, there is nothing beats an actual live speaker, especially if they're well trained in entertaining the audience and speaking or talking to the actual attendees, maybe even inviting them on stage. That level, you can't match that by any means for on demand. And I totally agree with you. It throws me off a lot. Sometimes I feel like the event program itself only have live sessions there, and in the on demand you can then later add that pre-recorded session, because people prefer to watch it at their own times if they know it's not a live session. It's up to the organizers, but it feels kind of like a dead space in the program. Maybe an exaggeration, but totally with you on this one.
Yeah. We talked about a little bit on best tips for increasing attendee engagement. Again, we could go on all day. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface there, I feel like, in some ways. But I like to talk about common mistakes for event organizers, like what we're seeing that they're doing out there that, is not the best use of the attendees' time. And I want to start first by saying you posted this really amazing post that you created on LinkedIn recently, where you talked about we actually need to subtract when it comes to virtual events. We need to cut the number of features that we're using. We don't need 100 features. Let's simplify. Let's have 5 to 10. And that might even be excessive on some levels if we're looking at the whole event with, session integrations and third parties and gamification and all those things to add to. But you mentioned less is more, and I couldn't agree more. And I think we're seeing a lot more. I'm saying more a lot. I think we're seeing, an increase in people just kind of getting bored with some features here and there are some really good features and gamification elements that I think should stick around for sure. I'm all about them. But I would love to hear from your side just more about the post that you talked about with less is more. Let's subtract, what we're doing and some common mistakes that you see.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's a perfect match also for this question you asked, like what are common mistakes? And a common mistake is just to overwhelm your audience with too much options. And like any person that has choice paralysis, most of the time, if you have choice paralysis, you end up making not a choice at all. So that is something you definitely want to avoid being an event professional. The problem there is that you really have to figure out which tools are the best for your specific setting and the specific goal you're trying to achieve. So obviously, always first comes your event goal. Like that is the most important thing. And I would say also a common mistake is not starting with the actual goal in mind, but just thinking like, oh, I want all the features in the world and this sounds cool and this sounds great. But then, yeah, it doesn't suit your goal, most likely, not all of them at least. So it's better to first start with your goal, then find out, okay, in terms of to achieve this goal, maybe, you want to generate some interesting insights. Well, a poll is probably a great way to do that. Then decide to go for a poll. If that's something you don't want to do, probably better to just drop the poll and not use a poll for the sake of polls, as we just spoke about as well. And I think that goes for all the features. Gamification is a great way to do it, but is that a good match for your audience? And that's also something where it's very important to talk with your audience and do some tests before the event to see how they react on it. What are they actually looking for? Like it can be that you have an event that is only for people of a certain age category that might not really feel comfortable having a lot of engagement around them. They want it as straight to the point as possible. Maybe it's another demographic, probably a younger one, that are digital first. They love everything around engagement and digital stuff, and the cooler it gets, the better. Then that's the way to go. So really think about your own goals, but also think about the audience and the topic, and within that kind of realm of different parameters, so to speak, figure out, I would say maximum like 5 really good tools that are the perfect match for your goals. 5 might, as you also said, already be a little bit too much. Like at least have one really good feature. Because if you just have a lot of features, probably you also haven't set them up to the best of your capacity because you as an organizer are also busy. Make sure you keep it, as you mentioned, like less is more. Keep it straight to the point and make sure it's the tools that are the best aligned with your audience, so they don't feel that overwhelmed. The features are there on purpose, like they are completely aligned with your strategy, your mission, your communication, the topics. It's a perfect fit for your audience. And then you will see that people start using them to the best of their capabilities, and the engagement is the highest it can be for your event. The moment you have 10 tools or more, I've been on events where I saw this menu list where I literally, like, it's on full screen and you still have to scroll down for all the things that you can do. And it just demotivates you to start looking in them, because before you have looked at all the features, the event is already over. So that's something that you really have to take into account. What are the most important tools that I can use and that really suit my purpose, that match my goal and my audience in this case.
Mm-hmm. I think, just event planning 101, we know the first thing to do when you're starting to plan is to come up with an event strategy and a set of goals. And when you have that in mind, then you move on to other things happening. But in tandem, I think it's really important for planners to sit down, especially nowadays, and map out an attendee journey, and see what that kind of journey looks like for different types of attendees. Like you said, there may be an age bracket where your audience, your target audience are, from the ages of, 25 to 40. Well, you'll know that, the younger ones are going to want to use like video. They're going to want to maybe use the photo booth and things that are more interactive that way. And they may be the ones kind of starting those chats. They may be a little more chattier than others. And there's so many different things to look at too, when it comes to kind of analyzing which features to use. But the best thing I think is just to sit down and jot down what you think the attendee journey should look like and share it with your team, knowing that your target audience and the audience who's going to be registering and who's going to be attending. It's kind of a no-brainer, what you say.
Absolutely. But yeah, it is unfortunately something we mistake a lot or forget a lot of times, because we all are human, so we all have that shiny object syndrome, that the moment you hear something really cool, you're like, oh, I want to try it out and I have to have it in my event. But it's always good to indeed take a step back and look at that attendee journey, and does it actually fit in, and does it add value to that attendee journey, or does it only make it more complicated? Mm-hmm. Another thing that I quickly want to add, we've briefly spoke about like a good host or a moderator. That is something that a lot of event professionals, they're like, I have great speakers, I have the best platform, I have the right features, I have a great tech support team, everything is amazing, like super AV team and high quality. But if you don't have a proper host or moderator to connect all those different elements, because those are also most of the time the ones that really do the engagement with the audience, because speakers are just focused on their presentation. The event will go on, but if you don't have someone to bring back the audience, set them, reset them, make sure that everything goes in that attendee journey, they kind of are their shepherd, more or less, like they help them through the different stages and find the right paths within your event. That is so important and often overseen, to really have a skilled professional there who loves to get that audience with them. And even though it's virtual, still feel that vibe, because they can entice them to really start chatting and share their thoughts. But also, if you have those tools, just having those tools is not going to make people use them. Like, you have a few, like maybe 5% of your event attendees are going to be curious and click on everything, and the rest just kind of is there being a participant and be like, oh, I have to go to a session, click on the session, all right, session starts, my job is done. If you don't have someone to then tell them like, hey, here's the chat, let me know what you can do, here's a poll, fill it in, here's the social wall, go make a picture. Most of them won't do it, not because they don't want to, but because no one actually activated them or told them, here's where you can do it, here's where you can find it, this is how it works. And that's something that's really a key and often overlooked, because every element is perfectly executed. But then if you don't have kind of the glue that holds everything together, probably it's going to fall apart. And then you've done so much effort and only forgot a very small but very key aspect, then the engagement is not going to be what you want it to be. So that's, I would definitely want to ask our listeners, think about, do you have the right person there that really can level with your audience and activate them, tell them, educate them during the event to make the most out of the event?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're seeing that a lot more, right? DJs, hosts, that's something that you would see at a live event. At a live event, it just doesn't go from session to session on the same stage. There's some sort of, someone who comes in and introduces, kind of sums up the session that just happened and introduces the next one. So the transition is very easy from session to session, and you connect with someone, there's a face to the event in some ways. And I think it should be someone who has a lot of energy and someone who is really interesting in a lot of different ways that's best for your audience. Again, it's looking at your audience and see who would be the best fit, to host, who would capture their attention and kind of motivate them to stay online. Really, I mean, that's a big goal for event planners for virtual events, is to, how do we keep our attendees attention, because you're right. Earlier you mentioned emails going off over here, my cell phone's over here, my computer's in front of me, but I'm in different tabs. I'm on different browsers. I'm looking at different things. And how do you keep their full blown attention? I think that's a good way to kind of segue into, using an event host, a DJ of sorts.
Absolutely. It is unfortunate that our attention span is getting less and less. And it's up to us as event professionals to make sure we pull every last bit out of that attention span so people can get the most out of it. You get the best of your attendance rate as well. As you mentioned, like a host can really be a powerful tool, or a moderator can really be a powerful tool, because they are less about sharing the content and more about engaging or keeping the people engaged. And also notify, like, next session is coming up. You don't want to miss this because it's going to be such an amazing topic, and sit tight on your chair. Maybe grab a very quick water, but make sure you're going to be back in 2 minutes, because then we're going to start off with this amazing session. People need that. It's as simple as that. Like, it can be super small touch points, but that is what gets people, like, having that fear of missing out. And that's something that it's such a powerful tool to play around with, and to have not just before the event starts so that people actually go and attend at your event, but also during the event. Maintain or retain that fear of missing out during your program. It's such a powerful tool.
Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about event FOMO. It's real. With
Absolutely.
virtual events, with hybrid events, with in-person events. I mean, FOMO lives in all events, and it's something that you really want to create. And going back to, having someone who really sparks, that energy, that's really contagious. It makes you want to stay on, see what they're going to say next. Maybe there's someone who's really funny, if that's kind of what you're going with for your specific event. But yeah, I think that's something to really keep in mind for event planners out there listening to this. Love it. I wanted to ask you, 2 more questions. One is a bonus question, so we'll save that for last. But what's your favorite feature to use or to see used at a virtual event as an attendee?
Engagement feature. I think it goes back to my top tip. Like, it's not per se a feature. It's literally just the way how you execute your event. As I mentioned, like, if you can have that already in the lobby, so you kind of have a very consistent journey from coming in, being welcomed, called by name, and then during all the sessions you have that as well. It's one of the best things you can have. Second best for me is calling people on the stage, and that's something that it may be scary for some attendees, so it's definitely not a match for all the attendee types out there, but it is something that really makes you feel like as if you're in an in-person event and they do the mic, throw the mic through the audience, or get someone to actually ask a question. This is taking the chat to a next level, and you have to obviously turn your microphone and your camera on, so it's, like, if you're sitting there in your pajamas, you probably don't want to do that. But there's always someone who would like to share their voice and actually give others also that FOMO. Because if you see somebody else talk on the stage, talk with your favorite event host or presenter, it's such a powerful way to be. Although you're sitting from home, you're still having kind of a conversation one-on-one with a super impressive speaker. And it's a matter of, turning on your microphone and camera. That's it. And you can have that conversation. So I think that those are my favorite ones. Like, obviously there are a lot of, quote unquote basic interaction features, but for me, those two really enhance the quality of the event and the experience. But maybe that's also because I'm kind of a relatively extrovert person, so I wouldn't mind turning on my camera and microphone at an event. Like, happy to do it. It's not the same for everyone, but for me as a participant, those are the 2 most powerful engagement tools.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. All right, last question around trends. This is something that I love to ask all of our guests here who are on the Epic Events episodes with me is trends. So for 2023, what do you expect to see around engagement? I know you talked about, of course, having hosts, doing more live, presentations. And again, shout out to DJ Graffiti. I feel like he is everywhere at every virtual event that I'm at. I'm like, oh, there he is. Oh, he's doing his thing.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of fun. But what other trends do you expect to see around engagement? Anything top of mind or something that you would like to see become a trend in 2023?
One of the things that I slowly see is we kind of started with, all right, no one knows what to do during the pandemic then. I mean, like a lot of platforms already were active before that, but during the pandemic, it was like everyone was like trying to figure out we have to build something and it should be kind of what it was of in person. Then we all realized like, okay, virtual is not going to be as in person ever. It's something completely different in itself. And that's where kind of everyone wanted to become the all-in-one of virtual events. So yeah, we do every event format for every type of attendee, for everything. And that meant, as we mentioned, like features, endless list of features. We can do everything. But one of the things that, if you also look outside of the virtual event realm, if you have a software that does everything, they will do everything on a certain level pretty well. But will they be an expert in every single thing? Most likely they're not. And one of the things that I slowly start seeing is more and more platforms trying to separate themselves from like we are a platform that does everything to we are only a platform for this specific event type or for this particular feature. Remo is a good example of that, where they really only focused on like doing networking events, and they have a few features added to it, but they understand that is where we want to focus on. You see a few companies also trying to pivot more into, we are here only for webinar sessions. Also fine, like as long as you have that specific focus, and that means that you can really enhance the quality of your features that best support your specific goals, which means you can specialize within that particular area of the event industry. And I think that is something hopefully we're going to see more of, because I think for me, it's very clear. Every platform has a specific use case, and not every platform should be a use case for everyone, for everything, for every budget, it's probably not possible. Mm-hmm. I think there are a few that kind of can do it, but are they really specialists in all those different segments, or are there a few where they are actually a lot better off? I would highly recommend all of them. Double down on that particular area where you either have your ideal client, the people that you love working with, the kind of events that your platform is doing the best or performing the best, getting the best results. Double down on that. And the more we see that, like, I truly believe for everyone, there's a platform out there. Mm-hmm. And, just giving up on I can do everything. It's not going to harm your business from my perspective, because there's, I like to think in abundance. Like, I feel like we live in a world where there's so much possibility. We have such a huge industry, especially the event industry. Mm-hmm. If we can only grasp a very small part, but do that really, really well, that is where we will see the quality of our events excel to a next level, both from a platform perspective as from an event professional perspective. So I think it's not just something that we that software companies themselves need to do, but also event professionals themselves double down on the type of events that you love to do the most. And in one of our previous episodes, we also spoke about this. It doesn't have to be necessarily on a specific industry. Maybe if that's your favorite industry, but kind of the event formats that you love to do the most. Like, events is such a broad thing. Like, it can be anything from a webinar to a 10-day festival, like everything in between, business to business, business to consumer. You have so many different forms and formats. Figure out what you love to do the most, and for who you love to do it the most for, and double down on that and enhance the quality. And I hope that's something we're going to see more and more, really, that specialization, because that will make sure that we can take those events to the next level. And I think it was very much needed, the all-in-one section, but now it's time for a new chapter.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you so much. Before we end the episode, where can our listeners find you?
Well, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, I would say, so make sure to follow me there. Also, you can follow the company page. We do kind of different content for both my personal profile and the company profile, but we like to share thoughts and learnings, and just add value to the industry in general. So make sure to check us out there. And obviously, if you're looking for the right platform, quickly check out Event Mender. You can just go to the main website, platform.eventmender.com, and you will find the right platform for your event.
Awesome. Well, for any listeners out there who haven't checked out your podcast, The Event Effect, I highly recommend it. I go and watch some of your episodes, and I get a lot out of them. You have some really great speakers that I've had a couple on as well for the podcast. So maybe we can, exchange ideas for all the amazing speakers out there that we still need to have on both of our podcasts.
Absolutely. Would love to do that. And thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here, Candice.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on this episode. It's been nice talking to you about attendee engagement. And also many thanks to everyone out there listening to this Epic Events episode. If you're interested in chatting with us here at vFairs, please send us an email at sales@vfairs.com. Until the next episode, peace, love, events. Take care, y'all.
Bye-bye.